All right, thank you. All right, we will call to order the July 14th, 2025 meeting of the Ashford Planning and Zoning Commission, our regular meeting. It's 7:01. And we will start out at this point. I don't see any alternates to be seated. I don't see Doug, and I don't see Alex at this point, unless I'm missing them in some way as I search the pictures here. Not hearing them, then we will just go with the commission. We can seat them if they come in. We can seat them for Dick Williams and 6, 7. Who else am I missing here? Um, Steve, Janet. I think they got them all. Am I missing someone else? Jerry's
Mark Schnubel, yeah.
Mark. Mark, that's right. Thank you. And Mark. So whoever joins can join. We'll put them in. All right, very good. Starting out, call to order and seating of alternates. So we've done that. So tonight's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 voting members at this point right now, Valerie.
Okay.
Uh, And moving to the approval of minutes, however, we do not have the June 9th meeting minutes at this point. We're still having some issues, and that's why Valerie has wonderfully agreed to step in and cover for us for this meeting. Mike and the land use office, we're working with them to try and get the posted minutes. Obviously, we have the video review, but we need to get those minutes put in place, and we will. Uh, Moving on to public comments, limited to topics or items not otherwise listed on the agenda. And again, those items under anything that might be delved into as a public hearing or an application at this point. We do have obviously POCD could be discussed, which is on the application, and anything else. So I'm looking for hands for anyone with public comment at this point. Margie, the waving hand as opposed to the electronic hand. Go right ahead. Margie Roy.
I couldn't find the electronic one quickly enough. I'd like to speak generally to the communications about the public hearing, but about everything else as well. I was surprised that the public hearing was not posted at the town website. We have a wonderful new website that is there for us as residents to get information about town happenings. And I went there and I could not get the notification for the public hearing there. I could not get the minutes to the last meeting. I could not get the audio to the last meeting. They have been very slow in appearing, and in general, the communication from this committee to the town has not been transparent. And that's a concern to me. I think that you as a committee need to address that. I know that it is not required for you to post public hearing notices to the town website, but I think as a commission, you could see it in your best interest to always do so. And I encourage you as a committee to put in place a requirement for that to happen. It is important that the people of the town know what's happening with your committee. And right now, it's not working. I would also like to ask if it's possible. I know that they send out email notifications whenever minutes or whenever agendas are posted. I would really like to see that happen also when the minutes are finally posted. That's a hit or miss thing. And we really need to start using the town website. You go to town meetings and people are always complaining how the younger people are not participating in town politics. You're not communicating to them in the way that they need to be communicated with. They are online. You need to use the website. You need to use the email. You need to make a greater effort to communicate with townspeople. And I'm not seeing that happen. So I encourage you as a commission to put in place some policies to improve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Mike, just a quick question regarding that. And maybe I spoke out of turn. Did I assume, do have the recording of the June meeting posted? Yes?
The recording's posted on YouTube, yes. Generally, what happens is when the minutes are filed with the clerk, Karen usually goes out onto YouTube and adds the link to the website directly.
Okay. Once she
So
has the written ones.
right, so because the written minutes weren't
Mhm.
sent over by Cheyenne, she hasn't added the little hyperlink, but the link to the recording itself is on the town's YouTube page, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We have had some issues recently, and again, one of the reasons Valerie's stepping in for this time. I do apologize for that, for both the May and June minutes being delayed to the point that they are. We do have certain FOI requirements for posting those minutes, so we'll need to do a better job and get those out. I do apologize on that. And as for the public hearing, you're looking for something separate and apart from what we post with the agenda for the public hearing. Is that what you're saying, Margie?
A public hearing has to be notified 14 days out, I believe, and that's when it appears on the Chronicle.
Right.
I would think that at
Yeah.
that point, it should be on the front page of the town website. I think every committee and commission in town that has a public hearing should have it on the front page of the town website 14 days in advance. The Willimantic Chronicle is not a valid way to communicate with the people of the town of Ashford. It's old school and nobody gets it. So I would think that every commission would find it in their best interest to see that public hearings are posted there. I don't know that there's another place on the website. I may be missing it, but I certainly couldn't find it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Uh, any other public comment? Uh, I see Matthew Kendall.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. I would like to ditto what Margie said. Transparency is key for any community. And I struggle to understand the establishment of the planned rural development district and highlight as for the issues revealed in Mr. Vittich, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in his letter.
Mr. Kendall? Mr.
Yes.
Kendall, that's one of the items that we do have under the public hearing.
Okay.
And I would ask that you hold those comments for the public hearing.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
It falls better under there because that's where we try and have all that information so everyone gets the same information at the same time and such. So not to interrupt you, but thank you very much and look forward to your comments.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner. I guess as a resident of Ashford, people move to this community for the peace and the quiet and the Green Valley concept. And since I've moved here, we have lived in Ashford since 2014. Over the past few years, it just seems that this quiet little community is under siege um, by development for concepts that are painfully obvious, in my opinion, and certainly based on the response going back a couple of years to the proposals for the warehouse. I guess my question for you and the other members is, what is the impetus for such a drive to develop in a community that is so small and clearly can't handle certain large scale commercial operations at all? Can you speak to the origin, the genesis of the PRDD and why the town decided to incorporate such a tool? And again, it comes back to again, it's painfully obvious this small community certainly has room to grow, I guess. If you look at Route 74, you have empty entities all over the place. I don't know why we think creating an easier avenue for large scale commercial production potentially to help enhance our community. It just seems very contrary to the reasons why so many people like yourself and everyone who's taken time to jump on board here, to see it change to this degree, to just be under a constant siege is unsettling. And I hope that the commissioners, your fellow participants, who I'm sure are under a lot of pressure, I can appreciate all the hard work you guys do in having to deflect all this. But it just, again, my opinion is we are just constantly this community is under siege, and I'm not sure where that driving force is coming from. But hopefully we can learn more about that as we move along. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. And again, for any comments you have going that you were going to make, you'll have an opportunity during the public hearing also on the PRDD.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. Okay, Joe, you had your hand up before?
Yes. I just would like to second what Margie Roy just had to say. I'm finding it a almost not a full-time job, but I have a lot of time. I'm a retired person, and I have to hunt for town events. And the Willimantic Chronicle is not available in town. If I want to find that, I have to go to Mansfield to the library. So anyway, I would like to second what Margie's suggestions for making communication go better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just as a quick statement to those people listening regarding notification, there are two requirements. Well, there's a requirement for two notices when it comes to a public hearing, and that is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, is it no more than 10 days out and then no more than 2 days before?
10 and 15 for the first.
10
then
and
the second
15.
notice has to be separated by 3. So essentially, we try to do 2 weeks before and 1 week before.
Okay, thank you. And the requirement, as the state currently has, is to some type of periodical. However, I do appreciate your input regarding getting it onto the website and potentially getting it out so that it's actually one of the alerts that comes out when it is posted. And we'll definitely look into that. Any other? I'm sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I'll just quickly note that I will be contacting our state representatives to see if there's something to do about this, because this can't be just a problem for Ashford with regard to print media that are out of date.
Yeah, it is, but the newspaper is a very, very strong lobby from what I understand. But we won't get into that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public comment at this point? Seeing no electric hands or waving hands, we'll move forward. Thank you very much for the comments. We appreciate those. It helps us do better for you. Fourth item, bills. I don't see anything listed. Mike, nothing we missed. No current bills out at this point.
Nothing that I have. Nope.
Okay, thank you. We have correspondence, but what I would like to do is put those correspondence, which all of them are in regard to the public hearing. So we will encompass that into the public hearing section for what we have. And all of those have been posted with the material for the meeting also. One of the things I'd like to mention, based on the fact we do have the public hearing, we have a number of public comments, that I am looking actually for a motion at this time from the commission to table the discussion on the short-term rental regulations until next meeting, next August. because I think we're going to have not our hands full, but a lot to deal with the public hearing and our unfinished business application, as well as the status of the POCD. So could I possibly get a motion to table the meeting for next month? No, not everyone all at once, please.
Oh, it's Janet. I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Janet. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you,
Tom
Tom.
Hastings.
Thank you, Tom. All those in favor of tabling the discussion on short-term rental regulations until the next meeting, signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Okay. Mike, do we feel the same thing on the form checklist at this point?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that is a discussion as far as a continuation. It's just if the commissioners have any additional questions for us or feedback, I mean, the form itself is developed in accordance with the regulations, so there's not a lot of discussion that can go along with sort of some of the terminology. It comes right out of the regs. But while we're kind of doing some of this housekeeping, I had sent a revised agenda to Mark, but it doesn't look like it made it up. The materials are posted online. We did receive an application, PZC 25-3 for 221 Pompey Hollow Road. It's a special permit for reuse of the space right at the intersection there next to Dollar General. So that would be, it's just a receipt. There's no action tonight. It would be for a public hearing at the August meeting, but it's not on the agenda. So I would recommend the commission make a motion to add it as item 1 under new business for receipt. It would be, again, PZC 25-3 for 221 Pompey Hollow Road.
Okay, with more housekeeping, can I get a motion to add an agenda item regarding potential acceptance of an application of PZ-25-3 for 221 Pompey Hollow Road? Is there a motion? Jerry, hand up. Okay, close enough. Jerry's hand was up, Valerie. Thank you. Is there a second to that?
It's Janet. I'll second.
Janet seconds. All those in favor of adding the receipt of application for PZ-25-3, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved. So we'll have that under new business. All right. Okay, so at this point, at 7:19, we will open the public hearing regarding item PZ-25-2, text amended application to establish section 320.2 as a new special development district known as the Planned Rural Development District. The applicant is the Ashford Planning and Zoning Commission. So I'd like to just go over quickly the agenda for the hearing. We'll have an opening statement from PZC. We'll have a short presentation of the PRDD, the Planned Rural Development District. Then we'll have comments and questions from PZC commissioners. We'll then open it up to public comment. Again, I ask that you raise your hand or gain the attention of the chair somehow, waving, whatever, balloons, whatever it takes. And then some of the decorum is please limit any previously submitted comments and new comments to 5 minutes or less so everyone gets an opportunity. If we find that there are other comments from the same folks, we'll come back around again to those groups. All comments and questions are to be addressed to the chair at this point. The chair will seek input from our commissioners or staff for questions, answers to questions. Then there'll be comments by the commission regarding the application, and then we will wrap up based on where we are in the hearing process. So I will start with an unedited and unreviewed statement regarding the application. The Ashford Planning and Zoning Commission is proposing the implementation of a special development district to be known as the Planned Rural Development District, or PRDD, to be applied to large parcels located within the town of Ashford that meet specific and defined characteristics for application as a PRDD. Each of the PRDD parcels are recognized as having unique potential for development. The intent of the PRDD is to offer solutions and input to potential developers in the early stages of development that will meet the goals, characteristics, and overall needs of the citizens of Ashford. The concept of the PRDD is that its application offers balance of maintaining the rural nature of the town and flexibility to developers offering potential economic, social, and needed services to the residents. The PRDD also offers the public multiple opportunities for PZC process transparency and input from the community. The procedure for the PRDD actually offers 4 opportunities for observation of implementation as opposed to 1 chance using special permitting process. The PRDD process also allows potential developers to work with the town through the PZC to develop a proposal that not only meets their needs, but will conceptually be appropriate for the needs of the town and its residents, with no preconceived plans that are not in the best interest of Ashford. After having input of multiple residents providing hours of testimony and written submissions through previous hearings, survey responses from the survey developed by the PZC, the Commission and its contracted consultants have developed the PRDD to address the issue of maintaining the rural nature of the town while offering a process that is inviting to developers to work with us for both of our benefits. At this point, I'm going to put him on the spot. I'd like to ask Mike D'Amato, our zoning enforcement officer, to share the application process, how it compares to the current special permitting process, and address in much better detail than me the benefits of the PRDD.
So I think with probably the best way to go through it, I mean, rather than at this point going line by line through the text, as part of the application was posted online, there's an approximate step-by-step approval process. I think that one of the things that's important to point out or to kind of keep in mind is that this regulation doesn't do anything to the regulations that are in place. It doesn't rescind any of the regulations or zones that are in place. It doesn't supersede them in that somehow portions of those regulations are removed. And given that this is a special development district and is essentially a floating zone, this does not, if this regulation is passed by the commission, does not apply to any parcel in town upon passage. It establishes a baseline for which parcels are eligible to begin the process if they so choose, but parcels that are eligible, they are not obligated to take this process, and there's no implied development allowance or future project simply by the passage of this mechanism. This is essentially another pathway for the commission to review projects, but there is no context on any parcel because it's been adopted. So I can share my screen if it would be useful. I can bring up the overall and just kind of run everybody through it. I know for many people they've seen it already, but I guess I can just touch on it briefly. So the main can people see my screen?
Just fine, Mike. Thank you.
Okay. So the main benefit to this process, the reason why this was sort of suggested or considered and looked at as an alternative to what is in place now, is that the current process is largely reactive. The commission sees an application that's submitted by an applicant, and they immediately upon submission of that application have to operate within the statutory timeframes to consider and make a decision on that application. The only real path to approval in Ashford through the zoning regulations and the commission is by special permit. Many towns allow projects to be approved by site plan only, and Ashford, that is not the case. So they would come before the commission through the special permit process. Many people have this understanding or belief that the special permit process allows the commission to make a decision on the application based upon preference, based upon public input, based upon review of the application and their determination as to whether or not they like what is submitted or what is not submitted. Special permit is an application for a use which has already been defined in the regulations as allowed. There are certain special permit criteria that the applicant needs to satisfy, but it is not an arbitrary or extremely flexible decision by the commission, in that they don't have the ability to simply say, we don't like it, the answer is no, we're going to deny it, or it meets the regulations, but many people have spoken in opposition, so therefore we're going to deny it. That is often how it's perceived and often how it works, but legally that is not how the special permit process functions. So to sort of change that conversation a little bit and to take the process away from this reactive, an application is submitted and everybody has 30 days to review it and develop opinions and participate, we tried to create a separate process that would allow for a more, would sort of equalize the conversation a little bit, number one, and also give the commission more flexibility in making a decision based upon all the things that I just discussed. So the PRDD is a sort of a multi-step process, which you're looking at here. The first step is the zoning verification, and that is so that the commission is made aware of an applicant's intent to pursue the PRDD from the very beginning. Normally they would submit an application and the commission would see it upon receipt, but this essentially puts the commission in the position of knowing when the application is being considered, and the applicant would go before the commission and say, you have this PRDD, I'd like to, make use of it, and I want to submit to you that I plan to, conduct this type of activity, and the commission will determine and verify that that is eligible. The activity proposed is eligible. That's a very simple yes or no, sort of like a more formalized application receipt. The next step is a zone map amendment. This is a floating zone, so it doesn't apply to any parcels. We're not landing this zone on any properties in town, period. So there would be a zone map amendment where they would then submit to the commission an application for why their site meets the eligibility standards. That would involve a public hearing. There would also be a master plan approval process, which would follow the special permit process. We reference the special permit standards in the regs. So the master plan approval would also involve a public hearing. The key distinction here, and I know that this is sort of beyond the level of technical interest of most people, is that when the commission makes these decisions, when the commission makes a zone map amendment decision, they are acting in what statute and case law calls their legislative capacity, which means they have full discretion on whether or not to make that decision. So it's not about whether the decision to apply the PRDD to a parcel is one that is supported by members of the public or the commission or the outside experts or even the POCD. The commission has much more significant legislative discretion as to whether or not they want to land this zone. The purpose for that is that if something is drastically incongruent with what they perceive to be appropriate for the parcel that the map amendment is being suggested for or proposed for, they can deny the master plan and say, we're not going to land this zone on this parcel with this master plan, simply because they feel it's not in keeping or context with whatever they choose. They don't have that legislative discretion with the special permit process. So if an applicant comes before the commission through the special permit process and they meet the regulations, even if every single person that participates in the hearing is in opposition, the commission cannot cite that opposition in their denial. The PRDD gives them a little bit more flexibility to have that conversation. On the flip side, or sort of parallel track, I guess, the special permit process requires complete design plans. When a developer has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop designed plans to submit to the commission for review, it is much harder to then have the conversation with that applicant about what the commission might want to see, because that proposal is entirely baked at that point. The regulations require that. The PRDD process was again sort of envisioned to allow for this iterative process where they first seek approval from the commission, if you want to call it that, or verification from the commission that they can go forward with that process. Then they come in with the master plan at a concept level, again, to have that discussion, have the public hearing, talk about the uses, talk about the building siting, talk about how that site design is laid out, so that they can get that feedback as they are going through the site design process, and not design this whole thing in a vacuum before they've even spoken to someone at the town. Finally, after those steps, once they've got a master plan, the commission says, okay, we think that this is an appropriate way to design this site. Then they come back with a site plan application, and that is where the site design is fully engineered, but also that site plan can only reflect the approval from the master plan. They can't get approval for a master plan and then come back and say, well, actually, we decided to build this, or we're going to do 5 buildings instead of 1 building, or it's going to be 3 times the size. That is an administrative yes, no process. If it meets the approval, if it meets the master plan, if it meets the regulations, then it goes forward. If it's not, then it has to be denied. So I think that the main takeaway for me would be, not only will these projects hit the commission's agenda at least 4 times in lieu of 1, but it will also show someone's intent to establish this reg, someone's intent to establish it on a specific property, then what their conceptual plans are for what uses and building types they plan to construct, and then finally, how that entire site will be designed. So it was really meant to kind of show that process as it unfolded, and give the commission much more flexibility in how it landed that zone, and also to have those conversations with the developer so that you don't end up with an application that is so significantly beyond the scope of what someone might think would be appropriate, because they've had the opportunity to ask those questions.
All set, Mike?
Think so.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Very concise, very complete. Appreciate it. Okay. So, that was the presentation. Comments or questions of Mike or myself or anyone, the commission itself, from the commissioners? Any input, anything you'd like to share? Looking.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay, Janet, go ahead.
This question's probably for Mike, and it's about section H, the modifications. So that you give examples of modifications that could be approved by the zoning officer in the chair. What's the process that the applicant would have to go through if they needed to go to the whole commission for these changes?
So if they didn't meet that, if they were seeking a modification that was not within those parameters,
No,
they would have to modify with the whole commission through the same process that they followed for the original adoption. So if it was a master plan amendment, the master plan is a public hearing process. So if they were not within these parameters, they would have to come back to the commission to modify their master plan. We would then have to hold a hearing on those changes, because it's following the special permit process. So there's a public hearing that would be involved.
So they're not, you're not allowed to say have the entire commission vote on it rather than the chair and just the chair and the CEO?
If someone was proposing to change something, let's say they needed to they got their final plans completed, or they went to DOT and something was needing to be adjusted on a small scale, then it would be something that would be reviewed in consultation between staff and the chair. But if it didn't, then it would go to the whole commission, and you would vote on it just as if it was a new application. It would have a public hearing. You would ask the applicant questions, and then you'd vote to approve that new amendment.
So I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with the H2I modifications do not propose to increase building size, height, or building or impervious coverage by 10% or more. And if we're ever approving, you know, a large facility, 10% could be a lot of square footage.
So that's a point well taken. The reason why I think this is important is that there are so many agencies that are involved in reviews nowadays, whether it be water company, health district, DOT, inland wetlands, et cetera, that, you know, by the time they get to a building plan, sometimes there have been minor modifications, and you don't want them to come back because, you know, they've got to increase a building dimension by a few feet, or expand their building height by 6 inches or something. I don't know. But what we could do to address that, because yes, to your point, a larger site, 10% could be a lot. We could add a cap. So we could say 10% and then establish a threshold. So no matter what the percentage is, if you're increasing impervious coverage by 5,000 square feet or something, 10,000, I don't know, then that would be beyond the scope of what could be approved without the commission's review. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay.
I'm just throwing that out there, but that's one way we could address that, so that larger sites don't have a significant increase in impervious without the commission having a chance to review it.
We could also do some type of a table or something also, right, Mike? Of a certain square footage and then a certain allowable limit on something
Sure.
like that.
Sure. Yep, we could do that.
Okay. And just to be clear, also, if I may, one of the things that Mike explained to me on number 2 in the modifications, where it says any changes to proposed building use do not exceed 25% of the building square footage and will not result in increased traffic. What they're talking about, he put it in very simple terms for me, and I really appreciate that. Was that if it's 100,000 square foot building that is being proposed, and they've got 4 different offices in there of 25,000 square foot each, and something changes, someone backs out, someone decides they want to buy somebody out and they want to go to 50,000 square feet. Well, that's a change of 25,000 square feet, and now it's 3 uses that are in there as opposed to that were agreed upon as opposed to 4. That would come back to the CEO and the chair in consultation to figure out, is that acceptable? We're not talking about changing the square footage as in number 1. It's simply the tenants or whoever is in the use of that building or the multi-uses of that building. And one of the things that was also pointed out, not to steal his thunder, is that one of our commenters from the public noticed that such modification on number 3, such modification will not reduce on-site green space by less than 5%. I guess the grammatically we're thinking it should be more than 5%. Did you agree with that, Mike?
Yeah, unless the commission wants to shift the percentage, but yeah, to address I think the double negative.
Yeah.
Can I ask another question?
You sure can, Janet.
Okay. Well, going back to the II on the building use, I feel it's somewhere we should say that they're changing it to permitted use. They're not changing it from a permitted use to an unpermitted use. Does this leave it too wide open for what they might want to change it to?
So above, let me just go to, we are going to ask them, find it here. In the application information, we will ask them to provide what the proposed uses are. So they couldn't just swap out some other use that was never really discussed by the applicant with the commission. So if you want to, we can clarify that further and just say that it has to be to another permitted use. The purpose of this, the reason why I thought it was important to include is so that it required consistency throughout each step of the application, that the use being proposed by the applicant was consistent, so that the application included a use and then the actual operation of the building included a use, and you didn't have a situation where the building was submitted to the commission for review with a specific use, and then essentially during construction or following approval find out, well, actually this is what the use is going to be. So it allows us to control that and have that be consistent. But we can work the word permitted in there.
Okay, thank you.
I am looking for other commissioner input. Seeing and hearing none at this point. Nora, did you have anything? I see you're off mute. I wasn't sure. Oh, okay. Now you're muted. Now you're not.
Well, I could say something here. In case people don't realize what we're trying to do is change is inevitable. You're not going to stop change. What we want to do is to have change go in a direction that we want it to go in. And the last time we had change that we didn't want it to go in was a large development recently. And our existing regulations prevented that from happening. And these new additions to these regulations are going to help us to keep change going in the direction that we want it to go in, instead of unwanted directions, just so people understand what this whole thing is about.
Thank you. Anything else from the commissioners at this point? Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for your comments. So now we will open it up to public comment. And if anyone, we have some submitted material. If someone wants me to read their material into the record, I can do that. Otherwise, again, we're asking that you keep, if you've previously submitted, if you can hit the high points of your submission, trying to keep it to 5 minutes or less, we appreciate that. And, but again, I can always read in any of the material that already has been posted to the record along those lines. But I see Charles Vidic has his hand up. Mr. Vidic.
Well, thank you, Ashford Planning and Zoning Commission, for what you're doing. I do think that there is merit in what you are doing, as Nord had just mentioned. But I would say that if I were a developer, and I have represented developers, I do represent municipalities, I do represent nonprofits. I've done over 40 years of work in planning and zoning. Occam's razor says basically, whatever is the easiest path to a solution is the simplest and the one that people will take. And while, I gave a summary of what all the municipalities in Connecticut do, because I maintain a database of what virtually everyone does in Connecticut, it's a much more complicated approach. And if a developer has two choices, the complicated one and the simple one, more likely they're going to take the simpler approach, which is one of the reasons why we originally thought it would be better to integrate more robust standards into the interstate interchange development zone or any of the others that are being proposed right now. I think that's the basic weakness that we have. And I did cite Terry Tondro, who's a former colleague of mine. I worked with him many years ago before he passed away. And his position on this really is that because of the way these proposed processes are being done in a number of municipalities, primarily places that have very sophisticated town planners and staff that manage these types of master plan approaches. But behind those approaches, if you look at some of the things that I put in, they put in a number of criteria for environmental protection, not just development. It has to be both. Since 1995, all planning and zoning commissions must address conservation and development. That's where the plan of development was turned into a plan of conservation and development. So all of the regulations that we have in Connecticut are stronger when they're based on the plan of conservation and development. And I don't see enough emphasis on sustainability in the proposed regulations. If everything is negotiable, it really doesn't establish baseline standards of acceptability. I think that's a very important point. It's not that you want every last T crossed and I pointed at the end. You do want flexibility, and I know the basic principle behind those. I used to write zoning regulation for a number of towns in Western Connecticut, but I do think there needs to be much more of a baseline of what's acceptable, particularly, as I mentioned, since Ashford has more public water supply watershed than any town in Connecticut, 99.97. The only little bit that isn't is just on the other side of the interstate from where I have my property on 40 Frontage Road. And so it's basically rounded up to 100%. We're the only town in Connecticut with that level of responsibility for water protection. And that's where you get into the issue is, of course, getting into impervious cover standards, riparian buffer standards, and stormwater management considerations, none of which are being addressed in this particular regulation. And yet those are the emerging standards in Connecticut. As you may know, there was a public act just passed, which is tasked a legislative committee to develop riparian buffer regulations for Connecticut. That just passed in this last legislative session. And of all the towns in Connecticut that are eligible, certainly Ashford is one of them. And so I would encourage the commission to put a little bit more in terms of a baseline of what we think is acceptable. Because if you start with a negotiation without a hand of what you want, then it's hard to know where the negotiations go. So I do agree with Commissioner Nord Yakovlev about the need to try to do something which will encourage development. But I also think there need to be some minimum standards that are there. And I also would emphasize, as Terry Tondro has said in what I've quoted from his work, that once you have that first session, which is not a public hearing process, and to the extent that that session establishes some baseline of what is going to happen, the public has been cut out of that process. And so that's the weakness of this particular case approach. And I did cite the Windsor case law which brought that to the attention of the Supreme Court as one of the limitations of that approach. So to the extent that you can overcome that, that's another thing. But basically, you've got 3 zones in which this would appear with specific parcels within those 3 zones. And I think it needs more substantive baselines of what you're going to start with in negotiation. You're stronger by having some baseline positions of what you want than leaving it entirely to a let's play it by ear and see what happens. It's just not the way negotiations work best. So I would encourage you to look at that. Having the long process may be good, but if the first step in the process preempts the public from having a say about what the fundamentals are, then there are concerns about what the public's role is in the process. And I also would say, as I did in my memo, that the list of things that you put in as potential uses is basically a laundry list of everything that could possibly happen. And I would suggest that the commission would be better off by taking the services, commercial services and housing services, housing uses, look at it as a mixed use affordable housing cluster approach. Manufacturing doesn't work as well with housing, but certain commercial services do. You know, it allows you to develop what could be a village center concept or a town center concept if you mix these properly. So I think I would not have the commercial, manufacturing integrated with that. They're really, that shows that you're really not sure what you're looking for. And I think it really isn't appropriate to have all of those uses being potential, because basically that's just like saying whatever you put forward. And I would suggest you should be more specific about the uses that would make most sense if they were integrated together. And I don't think all of those that are listed are happy bedfellows. So I think those are my initial comments. And I did write extensive amount of comments that you can go into at your leisure. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Vidich. Appreciate it. Christina Seba.
Hi, thank you for letting us talk. And thank you for all your work, especially Mike. Christina Sebo, 91 Perry Hill Road, Ashford. Pretty much my 2 general comments are what Mr. Vidich just talked about. The first is that the PZC was tasked to review and or update the regulations for the IID zone when you accepted the moratorium last year. It's not at all clear how this PRDD plan helps accomplish that. And I think what I'm struggling with is that I don't understand why the PZC isn't simply updating regulations for each of the individual commercial zones and providing clear standards, guardrails, and expectations, such as buildable art standards, conservation standards, and so forth, the kinds of things that Mr. Vidich has just talked about. I think the devil is in the details, and the details are grossly underspecified in this plan, as far as I can tell. The other primary issue for me is public participation. Again, something that was just marked on. As I understand it, the first phase of the process apparently includes a meeting or meetings between the PZC and the potential developer. If the PZC decides that the project appears to fit the PZC's underspecified regulations and goals, the developer is allowed to go forward towards a submission of more formal site plans. This would seem to be good for the developer, who would not have to sink substantial money into formal plans, not clearly as good for the public. First, the meetings and the collaboration between the PZC and developer apparently would not be very transparent, although I understand very concerned citizens could listen to the negotiations although they wouldn't really be cued in to do that. The public would not be able to weigh in at this critical point of the process. Second, after an agreement to allow the developer to proceed to the next phase, it's unlikely that the PZC would decide later to go back and reject the developer's proposal. There would be, in essence, a partial acceptance that might present legal difficulties if rescinded. And finally, at a planned public hearing, this initial partial acceptance could be seen as a blindside by the public and could result in a reprisal of the public uproar seen last year about the warehouse proposal in the IID zone. I think the public needs to be engaged at the get-go, not after a partial approval is already given. I think that's pretty much all I need to say. Again, the devil's in the details, and the details are just not here. I'd rather see the details be provided about what we really want, standards that are accepted in other places, buildable lot standards, things like that, rather than having a bureaucratic process overlaid on this thing that we all know how cumbersome bureaucracy can be, and this just feels incredibly cumbersome to me. So that's what I have to say. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you for your thoughts. Anyone else from the public? Mr. Gantic raising his hand there. Use your electronic hand. Mike, you know how to do that.
Don't have one. Thank you, Chairman Soarsmith, and members of the commission. Appreciate the work you've done on this, and Mike as well. I think that these proposed regulations have worked in other towns. I think they give a good framework of what is used in other communities, and can give the commission a good handle and the public a good handle as to what to expect potentially in a development before it moves forward in a site plan level. And I think that there's a lot of effort and costs that are put forth by a developer to even put forth a master plan, and so I think it's a good checkpoint. And then once that goes through, I think my one comment would be, and I live on Oaks Road, 144 Oaks Road. I am also a member of the EDC, although I'm speaking as myself this evening. I think that I would suggest that under Section G, the district expirations, that that time frame be extended from 12 months to at least 24 months. Many communities have up to five years or 60 months. I think, again, because there's a great effort to take just from the master plan phase to the site plan phase, different coordination with utilities and more engineering and architecture that has to go forth before be ready for that site plan application. So I think, as we all know, things tend to take longer than we all expect, and I think just a 12-month period would be pretty tight for the average development, especially one that's going to be looked upon with a lot of eyes and ears. So I think it's critical that we give somebody who's investing time and money and looking to invest in our community. And when we framed out within this master plan some things that are pretty critical, the environmental issues, I think, would be well undertaken and studied. And there's so many other regulations beyond what we have here in Ashford, both from the state and federal, along with other agencies that are involved, that we've got a lot of eyes and ears looking on this application. And also remember that there is another provision in the planning and zoning regulations that a developer has to put forth some funding for the town to hire some experts to help the town evaluate it, any plan that comes forth as well. So we have that added protection. So I would just ask that you consider extending that district expiration time frame from 12 months to at least 24. I'd like to see it longer than that myself, but that's kind of the 24 months at least is consistent with what the EDC's recommendations were back when we gave some comment back in February. So I thank you for the work you've done, and I hope that you will take this under consideration as you move forward with these regulations, and hopefully we can get these regulations in place so we can give the property owner a chance to market this property effectively, knowing what they have to go through to get some approvals, because obviously we've seen some impacts to our budget this year. Nothing's free. We all want to see trails. We all want to see things, and we're struggling as a community to have people that be affordable for anybody to live here, and also for us to be able to provide some of the wonderful services and resources that we all like to enjoy, and we think that are just why we all moved here in the first place. So again, I hope that you'll consider this potential modification, and I thank you for moving these updated regulations forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mike, just a quick question. And I think you might have already answered this, but I know you said making it 12 months. In the G section, we do have a granting of 12 months. Would you be looking, and you said something longer than 24 months. So would you say 24 plus the potential for a 12-month extension?
Yes, I think that's fair. I mean, let's look at it this way. Just the plan, the master plan is there. It's not going to go anyplace. I mean, there's no harm for allowing that to last a little bit longer. I mean, a lot of your other approvals in other communities, whether it's site plan approval and things like that, statutorily have some longer periods of time that applicants are allowed to have those, to act upon those. So I think certainly 24 months goes by very quickly, as we all know, with a lot of things we all are involved with. So I think that's a pretty reasonable extension. And like I said, I'd like to see it. There's even a few communities that have, I think, up to 60 months for a master plan approval. But 24 plus another 12 potentially. I think that's a reasonable step.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments.
Thank
Tony Paticchio, your hand is up electronically.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks to all the commissioners, and thanks to Mike for all the work you've done. I wanted to raise just a couple things. The first is thanks Jeff for raising the issue that I raised in the last section H. I wondered if I wanted to make sure that the sort of incomplete sentence in section D2B4, which is the narrative of statement of use, which at this point reads only an explanation of the expected. Clearly there's something missing there, or it's not, either it has to be taken out or what was intended to be there has to be added.
Right. I from what I understand, just to touch upon that, I believe it had to do with edits and tracking changes and things like that. And I think it didn't make it over. So we will look into that. Thank you.
Okay, the second point, and I think I'd like to echo a lot of the points that Charles Vidic made, is I do think that this very extensive list of potential uses, which isn't even exclusive, I think it would be worth the effort of trying to match to not allow just or not encourage development under any use to just be brought in on any, and I understand there's a preliminary process, but I do think we could clearly establish that there are certain uses that would be undesirable or inappropriate in some of these overlay zones or in some portions of these overlay zones. And I think it would be worth taking the time and effort to try to parse that out before an application comes in, or before the process starts with a developer. The second point is that I think that from what I've seen from the comments and from reading the draft regulation myself, as I think a lot of the concern is public input. There's a period before there's a zone amendment or a master plan approval, and then there's this period at the end for modifications. And I think the point's been made about perhaps some of those modifications that can be done without even coming back to the full commission maybe need to be a little more attention. I do agree that sometimes 10% and sometimes a 10% increase in the height could be significant, and maybe something, if it's already been pushed to the heights of how high we can go, that there need to be maybe some other standards that's not just an open-ended change that can be done in certain sites and certain plans. That might be too much. On the pre-process, I believe that section D1, that early stage, is still somewhat problematic. It refers to verification that the site eligibility requirements have been met, which is in section C. And it looks like under site eligibility, you're already looking at a master plan under section 2. And I think that the way this is set up, we're really inviting developers to try to tell us what our vision for Ashford is. And we're letting them take the initial step in saying, this is what works in your town, without providing, if we don't provide much clearer standards of development. And I think that the upshot of that could be that it will cost us a lot more time, and it'll be more costly to review these. If there's going to be a preliminary master plan being discussed, we need to be able to start hiring outside consultants at that point and have the developer pay for it. Because if it gets past that point and they've now spent a lot of money and sort of been given at least tacit go-ahead to file an application, and then it comes to the full commission and the full public, and I think I agree, it's a lot harder to say no at that point. And we don't have in-house and on staff, we don't have professional engineers and professional full-time staff. So to enter into that stage, that first stage development with a sophisticated developer who has plenty of resources, plenty of legal engineering, without having the ability to have that on our own and have them pay for it, could put us at a real disadvantage. It also enables, and it really puts the developers in a position, and most of them aren't going to be living in town. They're not going to understand our vision of our town. And they're going to be taking the first step of what's good for Ashford. And I don't like that. I think that a much more robust set of initial standards of use and development needs to be developed before we can go down this road, particularly given our not having a full-time professional staff and the ability to match what the developer is going to be coming in with in that first initial stage. This may be appropriate for bigger towns that have, I mean, when I was an attorney, I worked with towns that had their own engineers, their own full-size staff. We don't have any of that. We have a part-time staff. We are at an incredible disadvantage if we enter into stage 1 the way it is now. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Any other public comment?
Yeah,
Margie, I see your hand up. I was actually going to say, did you want, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'll keep it brief.
Okay, Mr. Kendall first. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Again, there's so many moving pieces to what's going on here and what's being proposed. 2 comments, if I may. Yeah, to that last gentleman's comments, I don't know how someone could come to the town with a project in mind and not have a complete understanding of what it is they want to do. I might be the only one here who feels that the special permit application process in place now puts the town and the PZC in a much better position, because why would you come to the town with a proposal that isn't complete and viable and ready for consideration, instead of under the new protocol, the PRDD, they can come with just pieces. And I think that other gentleman made a good point. It puts the town and everyone else at a very big disadvantage. If you don't know specifically what it is you want to do with the proposal, with your application, how can you change it down the road multiple times. I think it'd probably be easier. And again, I might be the only one who feels this way, Michael, but I mean, without a complete and accurate proposal in the application, yeah, it ends up being a drawn out, convoluted process, which puts everyone at a disadvantage for the reasons that gentleman cited right before me. And the only other comment I had is for Commissioner Nord. You know, there are some of us out here who do not believe change is inevitable. That's why we're living here. This isn't a huge commercial oriented community. Small mercantile boutique entities might thrive, but this town isn't. I don't believe the residents of this town are looking for large change. So I don't necessarily agree with that. Change, that's a variable. But so again, it's complicated. I can imagine all the work you commissioners put in, and I appreciate your work and allowing me to express myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. Now, Ms. Roy, I was going to ask if you wanted me to read yours or if you just wanted to touch points.
I'll just touch points.
Okay.
The first part of my letter is addressed to the fact that I sent this letter in February and the commissioners were not allowed to see it. And basically it was a list of questions that I wanted you to explore as you went through the process of developing this document. I thought that it was short-sighted on the part of whomever chose to not share it with the commission. At earlier meetings, I had asked how it was that we as citizens could communicate with commissioners, and Jeff told us that we could write letters and that letters would be sent on to commissioners. Mine was not. It was held. And I think that that's short-sighted, and I think that it's in the benefit of commissioners to know the questions that citizens are asking early in the process so that they too can ask the questions, decide if they're relevant, and get answers. I would encourage the commission to look at that policy that prevents townspeople's letters from reaching commissioners at an appropriate time. I also want to touch on the fact that the commission has done an excellent job in sounding out the townspeople about their feelings on this. There have been public hearings. There have been letters that have been read. There has been a survey that was sent. All of them strongly indicated that the people in Ashford believe development should align should support and protect the town's rural character. That is our identity. And you have got to keep that in mind as you go forward. A few of my questions that I had on this list was, how does this new proposal align with this clear mandate from townspeople to update zoning regulations in a way that promotes development while respecting and protecting Ashford's rural nature? That's underlying, and we do need to have that built in right up front so people know that. Why is a floating zone with all its associated complexities a better option for Ashford than a standards-based zoning regulations that clearly outline requirements? This goes to what Tony Patecchio was saying about us not having the paid professional staff. We just don't have it, and we are at a serious disadvantage when those who do have it come in and try to work with us. Is there any small town in the state of Connecticut that does not have professional staff like us that has one of these PRDDs in place? How's it working for them? How does ours compare to theirs? These would have been a good study to do earlier in the process to give us information as to whether or not this is really appropriate for Ashford, or is Ashford too small and too rural for this kind of document? How does this new zone process provide landowners and developers with clear guidance on what will or will not be allowed before they invest time and money in the process? That's a quick overview of the questions. There are others there. I wish you had them at the beginning of the process so that you could have asked these and done some research. I hope that you still consider that as you move forward. I think some of the people here have given some really thoughtful pieces that you need to look into and consider before you adopt this document. I think it needs some changes. I think that we need some standards. I thank you all and good evening.
Thank you again, Margie, for that. And as you can see, even beyond the input that we received from the community on this, there's, there are some issues even the commissioners have brought up as to changes they would like to see and some of the input that they've gotten. So I can tell you that we will likely be continuing this hearing and not closing it tonight with our actions. But that doesn't want to, I don't want to limit anyone's discussion on this in any way. But just to let you know, the likelihood of us, we will take a vote, obviously, but the likelihood is that we do need to not so much go back to the drawing board as it is refine what it is we're looking at, and again, take in some of the commentary, at the very least, answer some of the questions that have been put toward us, as well as see how we can apply some of the very thoughtful items offered by the public. Mr. Vidic.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up based on Margie's comments. If we're looking at, putting the cart before the horse, we're doing fine. But normally the horse is in front of the cart. And the metaphor here is referring to the plan of conservation and development. I would urge you really, as you suggested, to put off this hearing or extend it until the plan of conservation and development is complete, because that gives you the strength that enables you to have a new development zone, whatever the name may be, with the support of the plan of conservation and development. The state Supreme Court, and I follow the state Supreme Court in zoning and been following it for many years, has systematically encouraged zoning commissions to make their decisions based on consistency with the plan of conservation and development. So if that plan can be adopted first and it supports the proposals that are being put forward, that would be the putting the horse before the cart. And I think that's the proper way to do it here. And in that sense, to the extent that you are going to extend the hearing or even close the hearing and then reopen it after the POCD is adopted, that's the right way to do planning in Connecticut. And it carries the strength of your POCD, because one of the things the state Supreme Court does look at is whether or not decisions are supported by the plan of conservation and development. Now, I don't know if the plan at this point has got those kind of things already integrated into it, but to the extent that it isn't, that would be the sequence of events that I think would be very useful. Anyway, that's just my last comment, and I hope it's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Christina Seba.
Yeah, hi again. So I guess something that I hadn't really understood before is that a developer could choose either to go with the old regulations, for example, the IID zone, or this new process. If that's true, why would anyone want to do this new process if they were a developer? If they wanted to build something that we hated, like a huge warehouse, which we already have regulations that would support that. So again,
I'm sorry. Could you clarify that a little bit with what you just said? It seemed like it was a bit mishmash. I'm sorry.
yeah, probably.
I'm just trying to get my head around what you were saying. That's all.
Apparently, a developer could choose either to go with the old regulations if they wanted to build in the IID zone, or this new process.
Right.
Okay. Why they would choose this new process if they wanted to build something that would fit in our current IID zone regulations, which would be a fairly large building.
Which I can say, let me just say this to that. One, for a developer to come in and do as was done with the text amendment / warehouse, we already have a label on our head. Ashford does not want business, does not want development in this town. That is what developers have seen out there. That's what the feedback has been from those groups. What we are offering with this type of a procedure is to work with us, not come in and force a development onto us that the hue and cry from the public is that this is not what we want, but something that at the beginning stages, the PCC commissioners can work with them and identify what it is they would like to do and what it is we would like to see and make it beneficial for both parties. It does us no good for them to come in and not be successful. It does them no good to come in and try and force something upon us, as we've seen and experienced. So what this does is it gets us in the early stages. It also gets us in at a transparent stage. There's nothing out here that's not done in front of the public. There's no backroom deals in the back room of a tavern or anything like this. Everything is done in front of everyone, and everyone has the ability to have their public hearings to discuss, to, as you know, Margie expressed, and for some reason, send letters, indications in the office, emails, everything like this. We can get input like that. But again, the PZC members have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Have been given the authority by the voters to represent them. It's not a popularity contest. It's not a referendum, whereas the Board of Selectmen frequently run town meetings that have referendum votes and things like that. We run off of legislation and regulations. So it gives a developer, to go back to your point, it gives a developer an opportunity to work with us as opposed to have something that might or might not meet the needs. If we can tell him what we want and he can think he can do that, that's a win-win. Okay? If he comes in with preconceived notions about, and we've experienced that, preconceived notions of what's good for us, and we tell him to pound sand, then we're right back with nobody wants to work with Ashford. That's my response on that. I'm sorry if I went pontificate.
My issue is that why don't we just tell them up front what we want to begin with by changing the specific regulations, for example, the IID zone, or for example, Cattle Rock? Why don't we set those regulations in place that fit our needs so that they don't have to guess what we want? They don't even have to talk about, they already know what we want, such as, good conservation practices, buildable lot sizes.
Why can't we tell them that? Why can't we just tell
Why
them
can't we tell that by making changing the regulations that exist? What we are, so they're going to come in and they're going to say, oh, okay, we can talk to you, but you already have these regulations. Why can't we just fit into that, the 250,000 square foot building? It's already there.
One of the things that happens with this is flexibility. Is Cattle Rock and is the IID zone the same property? Do they have the exact same characteristics?
No, absolutely.
I don't think so. I know I'm kind of asking a question. Your head's a little hiding behind your name here.
No, of course.
And it gives us the flexibility to improve that, to put it someplace, maybe work with a setback that otherwise wouldn't have worked. Move the setback, shorten the setback to the road, don't move it back toward the Laurel Sanctuary or something like that, or don't move it back toward the wetland, have it up near the state road. That makes more sense in order to fit whatever it is they're proposing. I'm not looking to get into a big thing here. I'm just trying to answer some of the questions that you're putting out there that we've looked at in what we feel is what this plan has the possibilities of doing, has the potential to do.
But why do we still leave the old regulations in place then, if this is so much better?
Because
Why don't we just
this only applies to 5 or 6 parcels in the town.
No, the old regulations for the IID zone, why are we still leaving those in place?
Because there are other parcels in there smaller than the 97-acre lot that was most recently built with. It's
All
true.
right.
It's true.
Way too complicated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the input.
Mis-
Mr. Bennett,
Mr.
One-
Chair,
one-
could I make
one-
a comment?
go ahead, Janet. I'm sorry, Mr. Vidic, we'll let Janet speak and then I'll let you in.
I just, Mike had brought this up and I just wanted to reiterate it that, if somebody comes with a special permit and they meet the requirements of our regulations, we don't have much choice. We can tell them, we want you to, do this study or do that study, but we don't have much choice about saying yes or no. They've met our regulations and they've met any other requirements we give. We really have to say yes. And in this process, as Mike said, we're working as a legislative body, so we have the ability to say no. We can say, no, you can't do that. We want you to do it this way. So it gives the commission more flexibility in telling the particular developer what we think we want them to do, which might change depending on what kind of facility they want to put in. Like Jeff said, do we want them to build it closer to the road because there's wetlands back there, or do we want them to move it further back because there's a residence across the street? But it gives us that flexibility instead of just, oh, it has to be 50 feet or 200 feet. So that's just what I wanted to point out.
Thank you, Janet.
Mhm.
Mr. Vidic. You're on mute, sir.
To Commissioner Janet Bellamy's point, there's nothing wrong with flexibility, but really one of the important things to understand is that when the zoning commission establishes regulations, it represents what the community as a whole wants. And when you do have that, the community has an understanding not only of its property values and the impacts it will have on the community, but the developer will also have some expectations. That does not mean that you don't have flexibility, but you have some baseline standards that can be put in. And flexibility is always a useful thing. Special permits allow for flexibility. Planned development districts allow for flexibility. The floating zones allow for flexibility. Master plans that also allow for flexibility. I give training on all of those programs in Western Connecticut in my professional capacity. Those are good concepts. They work well. And I work with the Western Connecticut municipalities on these issues. So they're not either or, but it's establishing a baseline of standards is extremely helpful. It just doesn't mean it's the only standards. You can have flexibility, but some standards as a baseline is not only good for the developer, but it's good for the citizens of the community, because otherwise everything is contract zoning. And as you may know, contract zoning is not something that the Supreme Court supports. So it has to be something that goes beyond that. So it isn't an either or. Flexibility is definitely a valuable thing. In fact, I encourage it, but I also encourage a basic standard of minimums that represent what's good for the community, as well as for our own vitality of our development in Ashford. So it's not an either or situation, really.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Joe Hendrick.
So most of what I have to say in my written testimony has been touched on, but I'm just going to come back to something that Mr. Peticchio had to say, which is in my testimony. The town and the zoning commission has noted any number of times relies on our ability to extract a fee to use professionals to evaluate certain impacts of a proposed, and this is how it happens as I understand, in the special permit process. It's not clear to me where that would come in this floating zone process. would it come at this point of the master plan? I agree with the number of people here who've said that, one way to get what is the vision of this process, high quality design and development in harmony with the site's environmental characteristics, I'm quoting from the document, would be to put some standards in place that would, ahead of any floating zone application coming before the commission. But I am particularly, the one point, and I want to make is these parcels all have rather complex environmental issues, and in the discussion of the text amendment in the last few years, it came up over and over again that those issues could only be thoroughly evaluated at the point where we were hiring experts to look at them. So I really want to know that we don't have, as has been mentioned, we don't have professional staff that would be doing this. So how would that kind of vetting occur in this process? Thank you for your attention, and thank you for their work on all of this. I know it's not easy.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, the section that you talk about in the zoning regs for technical or professional consulting fees for large complex land use applications. One of the things that jumps to me right now, we've never had to use this, okay, in the time that's been it's been put out there. It was a great addition to ours in protecting us, especially when it came to some of the complexes, some of the things we were looking at, large waste management and things like this to try and fend off, if you will. But I do know that when it came to something like the special permitting process, where we weren't involved in the beginning of it, all it was dumped on our desk, and we need to schedule a hearing within 35 days from now. I'm thinking something with the PRDD, we would have the ability to respond to that over a period of time, which would include reaching out to, you put your application in, we're working with you. We want to bring in this expert, and this expert. And to do so, you need to pay for it based on section 326C in our regs in order to do that, to have experts come in, have people come in and give us their opinions of what's being proposed at the beginning, as opposed to well after everything's been put together, and we'd be starting at ground zero and we've got to come up with an answer in 60 days at that point. Whereas with this, just as they have 12 months, or at this point 12 months in the plan that's written here, Mike Gantic asking for 24 months, we would have more of a time frame to get our experts in or work out the fact that they're going to pay for these experts. And if they're willing to work with us and pay for these experts, it's probably a legitimate situation. That's where you work with somebody, as opposed to, no, we're not going to pay for that. Our experts are fine. You can just listen to what we have to say. So, that's one of the things that I think about when it comes to applying these, maybe for the first time, the technical professional consulting fees. Tony.
Let me, can you hear me now?
Can hear you. Yep.
Okay, good. I on that point, I just want to be absolutely clear. I'm not sure that our regs, and I haven't checked this, but I'm concerned about being able to, I'm looking at that section that's prior to the point where there's a formal plan that's been an application made, that D1 zoning verification process. I'm not sure, we might have to modify that section about incurring costs to include that stage of that stage, because that, as I understand it, that's before they've ever submitted a formal application. But they'll be coming in and with we'll be talking, but they'll be proposing, and we may need the ability to bring in a consultant at that time to make sure that what we're hearing from their experts, or from them even at that time, comports with what we want. I mean, I think that's one of the things that if part of this discussion was that they're going to save costs at the front end because they don't have to do a full development. Yeah, they may, because they have to do a full plan, but we still may need, and we should have the ability to bring in outside consultants and experts, even at this preliminary stage, before they formally filed an application, if we need it, to be sure that we are, that we can accept what they're presenting to us, whether it makes sense to us, whether their engineering, their anything is consistent with what our own experts would tell us. And I'm not sure I think you might have to look at when we can apply those, because if it's only at the site plan and master, we need to move it forward so we can ask for it at this point in time, right at the get-go.
According to our regs here, it's for the fee process application, it's when an application is filed.
Okay, so that whole section D1 is before an application is filed. That's when they're talking to you.
Okay, all right. So that's something we can, and I think Mike maybe has a comment on that. For continuity's sake, Luther, I'm going to have Mike speak on that, and then I'll have you, Mike.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, this initial section was really written and added because one of the things that has come up, before is, again, this idea that for a period of time, an application is submitted and is in the office and is understood by staff to be in progress for a period of time before the commission and therefore the public is aware that that application is in process. So an application gets received by the commission at a meeting, that date of receipt is defined by statute, and then they are obligated to conduct a public hearing within 65 days of the date of receipt for a special permit. That is yes, there are parameters for an extension under circumstances, but the long and short of it is, it shows up for receipt, which is defined by statute. And so let's say an application comes in July, and the commission, as many commissions do, cancel their August meeting because it's a summer recess, they don't have a quorum. That application is deemed received no matter what. It's 35 days of the next regular meeting, whichever is sooner, which means come August, that application for a special permit for, let's say, a 249,000 square foot warehouse, because the current regulations allow for it, is received. And the commission then is obligated to schedule a public hearing within 65 days of that date of receipt. And that clock is ticking before any member of the public or the commission knows that application has even been submitted. So to get rid of all that, and frankly, as staff, to pull myself out of the front of the bus, I'm trying to suggest we create a process where the commission is made aware of that application intention. So the application process for zoning verification approval is nothing more than the applicant saying, this is the application that we intend to submit. We meet the eligibility standards in that we are more than 25 acres with the parcel that has frontage on, contiguous with, or is accessible by a state highway, and is within the GC, TD, or IID zone. The commission will say, yes, you meet those three standards, or no, you do not meet those three standards. There will be no review of anything beyond that. But what I'm trying to do is get the very first instance that is even contemplated come before the commission in lieu of staff. There's no back and forth. There will be no discussion about anything. There will be no sort of hashing about a master plan and, oh, we like this or we don't like that. It is simply the commission endorsing their adherence to the eligibility standards, so that staff is not sitting on an application for 30 or 60 days. And then the commission says, oh, by the way, you got a public hearing next month. It's for a PRDD in this zone, and everybody's all shocked and sort of now having to react. So there's nothing more that will be happening at that stage.
Okay. Tony, your hand is still up. Did you have?
I wanted to respond to that, make sure I understand. So what Mike is saying is that the application will be filed before we go into any back and forth discussion, so that it will be at the point where we could bring in experts. But we haven't really approved any. I mean, the eligibility, site eligibility has two parts to it. It's those three things, but in addition, it says they'll have delineated these on a master plan. So when we say zoning verification approval, maybe we should just say, but it's not an approval, it's a zoning verification. I mean, it's basically the go ahead to submit,
It's like the receipt of our application. We're not
yeah,
approving the
yeah.
application. We're
Maybe that
receiving the
part of the problem
application.
is using the word approval at that point rather than just you've met the conditions for submitting an application, so go ahead and submit it.
Mhm.
And then my major concern is that at that point is so that the point when discussions are going back and forth before it goes to an actual public hearing, that we are clear that in that period of time, I guess since the application will have been filed, according to Mike at that point, we have the ability, if need be, to bring in and our own consultants and have the developer pay for them. Is that right?
Sure, sure. And as I said, if we have that discussion with them and they are legitimate, I don't see why they would not allow us to do that per our regs.
Yeah, and I think that if they don't, that's a red flag.
Exactly, exactly,
All
exactly.
right. No, I just wanted to be, my main concern in that, I still stand by my thing that I agree with Charles Vittich that we probably may need to at least set some threshold standards. And I do still think, well, I think that if we have that ability to hire expertise if we need it at that point, and the developers agreed to pay for it, that we can go some ways towards leveling that playing field. That I'm concerned about a small, but I still think you need to think about that and look at that. And I think that whoever raised the question of have we looked at other towns that have this and do they have full-time professional staff?
Mhm.
I've been through this process from the developer side, and we would go in with a whole team of people,
Sure.
and if the town didn't have a whole team of people to meet us, they were at a disadvantage.
It's like Aaron Brockovich, where they walk in with the clerk and the file boy as part of the
And I just don't want to
attorney
see
team.
us in a position where we're put in that position because I'm trying to streamline a process, but we are not in a position to be able to match what they're coming in with. And that's not going to come in with every developer, but there will be some that will. And
Right.
I just want to make sure we have that ability on that point. All
Okay.
right. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony. Luther, you had your hand up before. Is there something comment you wish to make?
I was mainly going to be trying to clarify what Mike beat me to the punch on.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump you, and you had
Nope,
the answer.
you did it better than I likely would have. I think it's also important that we not lose sight of the fact that this language is not existing in a vacuum and it's not the entirety of the zoning language, and that there are many other standards and processes that we can continue to rely on. And we've spoken in our other meetings about acknowledging that we want to develop additional low impact standards that can be referenced. And we it's not the intent of the commission, I believe, that these are the only pieces of language associated with development for the town, but that this is one part of the development for the town, and that it likely needs a little bit more cross-referencing perhaps, but that there are other parts of the regs that still come to bear even with this process.
Right. The fact that it still follows, I mean, it took me a moment to really capture the fact we still follow the special permitting guidelines when it comes to the master plan and such, under that section 323. Thank you, Luther. Mr. Vidic.
Yes, just to follow up to the comment I've heard from a few people. In the back of the testimony I submitted, I listed, I guess it turns out to be 34 land development districts in Connecticut. I believe it's 25 municipalities. On that list, the ones that are, let's say, the most rural would be Brooklyn, which is that planned development district, in Norfolk, which is a design district. Maybe you could say Westbrook has a planned residential development. Those three are the only three that come close to Ashford. Norfolk is relatively rural. Brooklyn is relatively rural. You might want to look at one of those two or three and see what their experience is, because they're all using the master plan process. There's only 25 municipalities in Connecticut. If you'll see in the back, table 2 of my testimony. And those are the only ones that are similar, and they're not the same, of course, in that they're more rural in nature. So you might want to see how they got theirs approved and what the feedback is from the Planning and Zoning commissions in those particular towns. All the rest of them are really suburban and urban locations, as you'll notice from table 2 of my testimony. So overall, that's one of the reasons I don't think the word rural should appear in our planned rural development district. First of all, there is none in Connecticut. You'll be the first to use that term, rural. I see it's an oxymoron. Rural and development don't really work together. I would give it a better name.
That's that balance we're trying to hit, you know, that's that balance between the two.
Well, but it isn't a balance, because rural and development are oxymorons. I would do planned development or do something that just doesn't have the word rural. You'll get a lot of people's dander up by using that word anyway. But regardless of what you call it, that's not the most important thing. I think, as Margie said, if you could talk to Brooklyn, Westbrook, or Norfolk and see what their experience is with the planned development concept, since they're really the only three that come close to Ashford. Because if you look at the rest of the list on the back of that table is submitted, none of the others are really anything more than suburban or highly urban. So it would be interesting to see what their experience is with it. Just because they've chosen to do something which is rather unusual. Master plans are usually done with towns that have professional planning staff and significant amounts of staff and time and resources. So anyway, I just want to mention that as a thought, if you have the time to do it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for narrowing the list down. Appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
Any other comment? I see John Seville.
Yes, I'm John Seville and
Seville, sorry, sir.
89 Perry Hill Road. Thank you, commissioners, for all your work. I know it's a tough grind. My big question really is what is the intent of the PRDD? And I think what I've heard this evening and also looking at the draft has helped, but I still really, I guess to me, it seems like what we're trying to do here is come up with a way to develop a large piece of land holistically. By holistically, it could encompass mixed use, features that really aren't specified in our existing regulations. But I keep being really doubtful that why it is that we can't accomplish this in our existing regulations. I understand some of what we've talked about this evening, but I know that there are limitations in our existing regs. Probably there are things that we need to change there, opening them up. But what I'm concerned about is that it's what the appearance, and I understand you're really working hard to try to counter this, but it really is starting to look like some kind of city-state, a walled city-state being built within Ashford. And that bothers me. there are so many things that are in the existing regs that would have to probably come over in the baseline in the PRDD. It seems like a lot of work. A lot of the conservation stuff is the biggest part of it. And that was my third point. It's the water conservation. I've talked to people that are involved with the Willimantic Waterworks, and they're counting on us. Their water, they don't have a reservoir system with a large conservation area. So they're relying on us for their drinking water. And of course, we're relying on it also. We've seen already what happens when, that is not conserved. And it's way more expensive to try to get oil and contamination out of the water rather than preventing it from getting in the water. So all of these things really have to, I think, be much more clearly specified in the PRDD. And that's pretty much my points. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. I appreciate it. Any other public comment? Good for hands, electronic or otherwise? Yeah. Okay. So at that point, I'd like to reach out to the commission for any final, it is our application. So any final comments or any thing you wish to share with the hearing? I know UConn's not playing tonight. As I suggested, with some of the input we've seen, with some of the changes that we know need to be made due to some of the typographical pieces and all like that, I would like to seek a motion to continue the hearing to our next meeting in August. Is there a motion?
This is Janet, I'll so move.
I heard you, and then I heard Jerry. Okay, so
Oh,
we have a second
whatever.
with Jerry. Thank you very much. Primary with Janet. All those in favor of continuing the hearing for next month, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? And did anyone catch when Doug Jenny joined us? Because I did not.
I didn't hear him.
Yeah, I saw him come in. It was quite a while ago.
Maybe Doug knows when he came in.
Does
It
Doug
was
know when he
about
joined us?
7:30, give or take.
7:30. Do you have that, Valerie?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Based on his statement, we've had and the recognition that I saw him earlier, Mr. Jenny joined our meeting at 7:30. Okay,
It was-
with that,
It was during the public hearing, Jeff.
thank you very much. Okay, so with that, we have we have continued the public hearing to our next month, and all those that had submitted questions in their written statements, as well as those that were submitted here or reiterated here, we will respond to, and you'll have responses to those questions before the next meeting, before or at the next meeting. Thank you very much. POCD status update. Excuse me. Yeah, well, we're not, no action on the hearing because we have not closed it for PZC 25-2. Moving on to the POCD status update. We had hoped to have some material for our members, but it got to be a little bit late to give it to you in order to review before the meeting. But our plan is to have Janet help me. I know Mark's not here. Was it 3 or 4 sections?
I think it's 4 sections next.
We're going to have 4 of the individual sections from the different departments or agencies available for review. Mike is still working with NECOG for the pictures and tables and charts and such, and the maps. But we hope to get a number of the narratives into your hands at least 10 or 12 days before the meeting so that you can review those drafts and we can hit the ground running with that. Once we get through those are about half of them. And then we would have the other half available for our September meeting, ideally along with our introduction and our implementation plan and all the other parts. It's coming together nicely. And I know Mike told us to be hands off, so we didn't make any more changes before we sent things to you. But there are a couple of areas we do need to address. Again, the group is working very diligently. We are taking this week off. As I said, Mike needs time to put some of the material together so that we have something to review and edit. There's ever so slightly more edits, no more edits. But again, the group is working very, very hard. Janet, any comments?
No,
No?
but I think it's going to be a great document.
It's going to be a great document from your mouth. Any questions on the POCD? That was short and sweet. Thank you very much. Now we do have an application looking to be received for PZ-25-3, which is 221 Pompey Hollow Road. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes.
Yes. And can you that's the cinder block building between Dollar General and the Wooden Spoon, correct?
Right. Yep. So it's a special permit in the for the GC zone to reestablish an automotive related use on the property.
Which was a previous use of the property, correct?
Yes, many moons ago.
Many, many moons ago.
So the application materials, which are linked to the agenda, show that have their application, have the referral, have the original site plan from when there was fuel islands and stuff there, and then their proposed layout. So that would be, I've got to work with them on the noticing and the sign and all that stuff. So this would be for August public hearing.
Okay. When it comes to the new site plan that they submitted, I guess the only thing I'm wondering about, and I heard this, I didn't see anything back there when I took a peek, anything about a wetlands in the vicinity. Is that something that we can check into?
As far as our maps show, that there are no wetlands on this property.
Okay. All right.
So there may be some in the back, but they would be beyond the property line for this parcel.
Well beyond. Okay. Very good. Okay. A motion to receive the
Motion to
application.
receive.
Jerry motioned. Is there a second?
Janet was second.
Janet seconds. All those in favor of receiving the application for PZ-25-3, 221 Pompey Hollow Road, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Only something. All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, I'm going to go with unanimous on that one. Okay, zoning officers report. Mike, anything?
So I think as part of kind of the application form, which I know that we tabled, we've been working to make updates to the website and what information is there, but also we'll be moving, I think I've talked to this before, some of the commission applications onto the town's application portal.
Yep.
So everything is in one place, and been working with Bonnie to figure out how we're going to address some of the application addendums that we have, or may develop in the future, but also kind of allowing us to create a place where everything will live so that you're not going on one place for commission applications and, wetlands is not online at all. Then everything we do after the commission is on Permit Link. We're trying to bring everything to one place so that if you're interested in something going on with a property, you can go into the portal, put the address in, and you'll see everything. So we're working on that now, and we'll you'll see some stuff on the website kind of changing as we get all that stuff ready. So that should make finding and then tracking and keeping up to date with some of the things that are happening with the commission and overlap with wetlands, trying to make it more accessible. And the other thing that I will mention, just because it came up earlier, when it comes to the website and the way that agendas and things are posted, we provide all that stuff obviously to the town clerk. The town clerk posts those things on the website. But one of the benefits to the new website is that anybody can use their email address and they can subscribe to one or more things. So you will be notified when an agenda is posted, when minutes are posted. You'll get a notification email. It's automatic, so we don't have to remember to do it each time. So if anybody wants to be kept up to speed with what any commission is doing, you can go online and subscribe. The other thing that you can do through the E-code system that we track all of our regulations and ordinances is you can subscribe and you can monitor if there are certain things that are changed, like about a specific section. You can sign up for updates that way, and that's all managed by anybody sort of individually.
That's great. Anything else?
Jeff, I have a question for Mike.
Oh, just one second, Nord. Valerie,
Yes,
what I would like to do is the statement that Mike just made about subscribing to the website.
yes,
However you've captured that, could we put that bolded at the front of
Okay.
the minutes?
at the front, okay,
Yeah, at the front of our discussion.
yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Nord.
Mike, this Pompey Hollow Road auto use business, does it have a name? What name are they going to be going under? Do you know?
Ashford Motors is what they submitted.
Oxford Motors?
Ashford.
Ashford Motors. All right.
Yeah, I don't have anything additional beyond what's in that application at this point.
Yeah, okay. And there's a nursery going across the street from them. It looks like a pretty large scale operation that's going in over there.
That's more of a tree farm. They will not be open to the public. They do some demonstration stuff and they work with UConn and other places on all kinds of complicated agricultural things and looking at like hybrid trees. And so there's a lot of stuff that you're going to be seeing there, but it will be more closely related to a farm. It won't be a nursery that you go and buy
It's not a retail.
shrubs at
It's
or
not a retail
mulch.
establishment. Yeah.
Right.
Are they going to have a building on the site?
They have a small sort of hoop house structure just for storage, but at this point there will be no physical building, no.
All right, thank you.
Anything else from the commission? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Jerry. Second.
I'll second it. Luther.
Thank you, Luther. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for your attention during the hearing. And I appreciate both your efforts as well as the public's that's still with us and the input that they give us. It only, again, as I said earlier, it only makes us better to do our job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike, Jeff and Mike.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Night.
night.